welcome to another episode of Fay Tom's Divorce Coaching Podcast. Really excited again today. We've got another guest. I'm loving the guest we're having on the show. And today we've got Saffron Rogerson, and she is a nutritional therapist, and her company is called This Life Nutrition. So thank you, Saffron, for joining us today.
That's okay. Hello.
Cool. Right. So I suppose in a snapshot, for most people would know, I would have thought, or should know, but tell me, what is a nutritional therapist, Saffron, in your kind of opinion, what you view yourself as?
Well, a nutritional therapist is just it's a therapist who takes the science of nutrition and helps people with their health problems. So whether it's blood sugar balance like diabetes or going through a lot of stress, we use food and testing and supplements to help people regain their health, basically.
Cool. And I know that you specialise in a couple of other areas as well, don't you? And obviously we'll be talking about from a divorce, separation, relationship breakdown, which is a high stress, high emotional situation, but you cover and work in a number of different areas, don't you?
Yeah, absolutely. So I help people with weight loss. Up until last year, I was working in a gym, so I help people with sports. I help people with lifestyle choices. Veganism is obviously a big one at the moment. And I also specialise in fertility. So I help clients who are either trying to conceive naturally or going through the IVF cycle. I help them to maximise their chances as well.
So what do people typically, I mean, I know you mentioned about some of the areas there, but what does someone typically come to a nutritional therapist for? And when they actually come to, is it around, like you say, is it weight loss, weight gain, they want to shrink up, bulk up, etc.? Because you mentioned about the gym. I mean, is it?
I think most people actually associate nutritional therapy with digestive issues, actually. So I think the majority of our clients will be around, weight loss comes into it a lot. I mean, I have a lot of hypothyroid clients with Hashimoto's and Graves'. The GP can do so much with, but then we can actually just tailor and help that a bit more. But I think predominantly when people think of nutritional therapy, they think of digestive issues like IBS or IBD or celiac or food intolerances, and we can do an awful lot to help people with that. And interestingly, again, that would have a big slant on divorce as well, because as people are going through divorce and they're getting stressed, stress has a major impact on the digestive system. It slows down digestion in the stomach, but it also speeds up motility, and it also affects the barrier integrity around the gut. So people may develop food intolerances as they're going through divorce and they get more stressed. So yeah, I would say most people would sort of associate nutritional therapy with digestive issues, really.
Yeah. No,
that's fascinating, Saffron. Again, it's something that I'm really, really interested in. And I know me and Tom have got a few questions for you around what you do. And we always talk about our own experiences. And for me, especially again with my second marriage breakdown, I didn't eat. I think I was in shock. I was in denial. And literally my stomach and my brain just literally disconnected. I didn't feel hungry. I didn't want to eat anything. You know, lots of people talk about the heartbreak diet. I lost a lot of weight because I was not eating, because I didn't feel hungry, because if someone put food in front of me, I just didn't want to eat it. And I just wanted to ask you around, if you are going through that, what's the best thing that you can do to get your eating more regular? Because it went on with me for months. I was like this, and it's a scary place to be, because obviously you're not getting the nutrients. Like you say, you're feeling stressed. But I just could not force eating anything. Didn't want to do it.
I think people sort of tend to go in either one or two directions. They'll either be like you and they won't eat and they will absolutely completely lose their appetite, or they'll go the other way and they'll turn to comfort eating and binge eating as a way of making themselves feel better. So there's sort of two avenues. The thing with when people, my sister was very similar. She lost an awful lot of weight through her divorce. And if you know that you ought to be eating, or your family are telling you you're not looking the best, or you're losing weight, and they're worried about you, and you know mentally you need to be eating, there are a few things that you can do, like your smoothies. I mean, I recommend smoothies for my fertility clients quite a lot, because they are such an easy way to put a lot of nutrition in one little pot, and you can just stick it in the fridge, and you can just think every now and then, well, I'll just have a mouthful. So you can sort of have a little bit every now and then, so you don't feel like you're overwhelming yourself with food. But it's a good way of slamming a whole lot of nutrition into one little place. So as a recipe off the top of my head, for example, the nutrients that are particularly important when you're going through stress are magnesium and vitamin C and B vitamins. They're all really important for mood. So if you were just to make up a smoothie, say with ground seeds and nuts, a handful of spinach, yogurt, or coconut water, and you can just put that in the fridge, and you can just have a mouthful every now and then when you felt up to it, or when, you know, family members are trying to get you to eat more. But the thing with not eating is it's almost like a catch-22, because you need the nutrients to give yourself an appetite. So zinc, for example, is really important in appetite. And if you're not eating and you're becoming malnourished and you're getting less zinc, your appetite is going to diminish even more. So if you can try and arrest it by just getting in sort of like little micro bullets of nutrition, that's the best you can hope for, really.
So little and often, that's what I guess you're saying.
Yes. Yeah, you don't have to feel the responsibility of sitting down and having 3 square meals or a big breakfast. Little and often, if that's how you can do it, that's how you can do it.
And can I ask, I mean, all that food, I mean, I love smoothies now. I've always got a smoothie in my fridge. Can I ask you about vitamin supplements on top of that for people who aren't eating? Is that going to fill the gap, or are they not going to get, obviously food's better, but what do you feel about vitamin supplements on top of that?
No, I think vitamins, well, obviously I see people that are not particularly in the best place anyway, so I recommend vitamins for pretty much most of my clients, but that's because most of my clients have a health issue. But I think if someone's not eating properly, then vitamins do, for most people, they're a sort of a safety net. You do have to be careful, because if you're on any medication, say for example, you know, say you're on a contraceptive pill and you'd heard that St. John's wort was good for depression, you were taking that could impact on the contraceptive pill, and you can find yourself with less protection. Or for example, if you're on anything that was sort of like a blood thinning medication, for whatever reason, for anything you might have alongside going through the divorce, you've got to be careful not to take something like omega-3 or vitamin K, because it accentuates it. So for most people, vitamins are good, but I would really, really recommend that you talk to a nutritional therapist just to make sure it's not contraindicated. Another thing on top of that as well is that quite often GPs, you know, if you go and tell a GP that you're suffering from anxiety, you're going through a very stressful period, and they might recommend that you go on to an antidepressant, an SSRI. Those can actually deplete your body of certain nutrients. So somebody that's on an antidepressant, they're going to need they'll have a greater need for something like magnesium, which is actually depleted when you're going through stress. So you'd have a double need for it. So yeah, definitely I would recommend nutrients, but I would also recommend getting them under advice.
I think, yeah, well, I hadn't even thought about that, but just that last example you gave, and it's a kind of another catch-22, isn't it? And it's also trying to break that cycle. And I think what a lot of people, again, just kind of obviously what we're talking about today in terms of how it impacts people on a relationship breakdown level, is that high level of stress and emotions that are constantly ever changing. It's about that relationship as well with food and nutrients, etc. And I suppose it's also where, like you said, people either go one way or the other. It's also then what they're consuming. So I was eating loads. I wasn't eating very healthily, and I was drinking too much, and all the other stuff that I shouldn't have been doing. And of course, all of that then has a knock-on effect as well. In actual fact, it has that adverse effect, because it's what I'm consuming was bad for me, and actually wasn't helping me. So whilst I was like, oh, I'm fine, because I'm eating 3 square meals a day. Going for 3 drive-throughs a day, and then also drinking or whatever. But I suppose one of the things I was going to ask you is, what are the most kind of common issues from like high stress, high emotion type areas that play on the physical health? Because we've spoken about the mental health side of things here many times before, haven't we, Faye? In fact, a lot of the time. But from a nutritional perspective, what are some of those other impacts that those high stress and high emotional situations can impact people, as opposed to just weight loss or weight gain? How else can it affect them?
Well, I guess people turn to crutches, as you mentioned already, drink and comfort eating. The reason why people might want to comfort eat is because those quickly metabolized foods like sugar and simple carbohydrates, they actually release, you know, the feel good hormones. They actually release a little bit of serotonin. So people are driven to seek them out, and then they feel bad, and then they sort of feel doubly bad because they know they're eating badly, but they don't know why. So people will look for food as a crutch, and they'll look for alcohol as well as a crutch, because initially it helps you relax. But then, of course, after the first glass or two, then any positive benefits you get from drinking are just negated. And that's going to have a knock-on effect on sleep as well. If you're drinking too much, you're going to be sleeping badly, and sleep's going to have a knock-on effect the next day, and you're going to have to want to comfort eat as well, because your appetite will be raised. So sleep is obviously impacted, which has a knock-on effect on your ability to withstand resisting comfort foods and resisting those crutches, whether it's smoking too much or drinking too much, or or even turning to drugs if you need to. So sleep is really important, if you can get a handle on that. But also exercise as well. I know it seems like exercise is outside the remit of nutrition, but just making sure you have a point of getting outside just for a half-hour period at some point during the day, that lowers stress. It also balances out blood sugar. So if you have been eating lots of rubbish food, it's going to help take some of that blood sugar out. So you're not hurtling down a road towards pre-diabetes. But it also gives you a chance to assimilate things and to think, and just to get out, and also to get some vitamin D. So that just not feeling like you have to get ready for a marathon or do ultra training or do anything silly. Just get out for a half-hour walk. Just give yourself that chance to step outside your routine and to do something else.
Actually, because I've actually always still can't do that at the moment. Fingers crossed we can soon, but I know you have as well, Fay. But a lot of my clients, wherever feasibly possible and where I could, especially last summer when the restrictions were slightly eased a bit, I would always, wherever possible, try and meet my clients and actually meet them outside. And our sessions would be going for a walk and actually, like I said, helping them kind of decompress everything, take the pressure off themselves, get outside, hear the noises that are going on, feel the environment and things like that. Just, it doesn't feel like it's in this kind of confrontational interview style type therapy or coaching in this respect, and that always really helped them. So I think one of the points I think for any of our guests as well that we've had on before, isn't it, Fay, is that all of these things combined create the kind of the greater good and the greater whole. This is another part of the puzzle, isn't it, in terms of your relationship with food, how you're eating, when you're eating, what you're eating, etc., and then how it also impacts things like you say, like exercise and so on and so forth. One thing I want to know, and because we always do this, don't we, Fay? That's why there's one man and one woman here. Do you see or are there any different impacts specifically to men and women in again, high stress, high emotional situations towards their nutrition for men and women, such as divorce or separation?
The impact of stress, I think maybe one of the areas in which it might have a different impact on men and women is that women are more prone to autoimmune diseases, things like Hashimoto's and Graves I've mentioned, but lupus or autoimmune issues. So it's because I've mentioned already the impact of stress on the digestive system. What happens is the barrier function around the gut worsens, and you get particles crossing over into the bloodstream, which your body recognizes as alien. So because sort of like the gap, you've got these, it's called tight junctions, because they're like the junctions where the nutrients are supposed to come across into the bloodstream are getting made bigger because of stress. You actually sort of like get food particles coming across, and people will get a reaction then to things like broccoli, because broccoli is not supposed to be in the bloodstream, it's folate that's supposed to be in the bloodstream. But when you go through stress, you can that immune response is exacerbated, it's exaggerated, and it seems that women are more susceptible to have autoimmune issues following on from that. So long-term issues down the line do seem to impact women more than men. But I think the physiological response of stress, that whole fight or flight response, is pretty much the same for men and women. It's driven by the adrenal glands. You need more magnesium, you need more vitamin C. And that response, I think, is pretty similar between the two sexes. That's the only thing that I can think of as autoimmune issues.
I was just interested to ask, because I remember I was writing a blog piece some months ago about the effects of divorce separation on men. And one of the statistics that I found, I can't remember where it is, I'll try and find it to quote it as source afterwards in the comments and YouTube clip, but this I can't remember the source was, but it said that men actually suffer more with weight fluctuation issues, either up or down, than women do going through divorce or separation. So I didn't know how that might kind of connect in terms of nutrition and how they're looking after themselves and I suppose the example that I gave her, like 3 takeaway meals a day and drinking too much, etc. So I didn't know if that was kind of linked in any way. It was just interested to know.
It might just be more down to the family situation. I think I'm making massive gross assumptions here, but assuming that the woman would still be the predominant person looking after the children, they would still be making regular meals which they might partake in with the kids, whereas a man left to his own devices might forget to eat one day or might not be quite so regular in his habits. Maybe there's some impact from that, but physiologically I can't think why there would be.
I think you're right about the forgetting to eat, because I noticed the first week on the Monday and Tuesday, I said to you, didn't I, Faye? The first Monday and Tuesday that the kids were back at school, and I came downstairs both days at 4 o'clock and said to my mother, I haven't had lunch, because I haven't had 4 kids going, I'm hungry, I need a snack. So I forgot. Faye, you were going to ask a couple of questions.
I'm really fascinated with what you were saying about the fight and flight. You know, I touched on the kind of the shutdown mode, but when you're in that fight and flight mode and maybe you're running on cortisol, I mean, should you, when you're like that, I imagine you're eating more because you need the energy to keep going. I mean, how dangerous is that from a nutrition perspective?
So yeah, increased cortisol is not good. It sets you up. What happens with the cortisol when you're going through the fight or flight response is that your body is aware that it's going under a stress. It doesn't really register the fact that it's a psychological stress as opposed to, you know, you being chased by the hairy hippopotamus or whatever. But because it thinks you under stress, what it does is cortisol will flood the bloodstream with sugar because it needs to get energy to the large muscle groups so you can get away from whatever it is that's stressing you out. When you don't actually use that sugar, insulin comes in and it takes it out because it's dangerous. You don't want to have a stroke or anything. And it will then take it out of the bloodstream, but it won't put it where it found it, which was in the in the liver or in the muscles. It will put it back, and it will put it back around the middle. So one of the things that people going through a lot of stress will find is they might find they're putting on a spare tire, even if they're losing weight around the rest of them, even if the rest of them is beginning to look a little bit gaunt or a little bit thin, they might still find actually they're gaining weight around the middle. And that is cortisol that is doing that. Because it is putting sugar into the bloodstream, that sugar's got nowhere to go and it ends up going around the guts. But what that can also do is, because the fat around the middle is not inert, it's not like fat on your backside or your thighs that don't do anything. It's actually an endocrine repository, so it actually increases estrogen levels. So if you're getting stressed anyway, the last thing you want is disrupted sexual hormones. The last thing you want is estrogen levels rising and disrupting, your menstrual cycle, or possibly exacerbating symptoms of the perimenopause. You want all of that as static as possible. So stress, the cortisol levels will also lead to disruption in sex hormone levels. And because all the cortisol was also triggering insulin, the last thing you want is to become insulin resistant and then go down that path towards pre-diabetes that I've already mentioned. So yeah, cortisol is quite bad. It causes constant chronic cortisol. You know, as an instant response, it's obviously a good thing. It's part of our survival mechanism. But when you're constantly producing too much cortisol, it can set you up again down the line for these other health issues, for increased inflammation, diabetes risk, and fat weight on it, especially as a woman.
Thank you. So if anyone's listening to this thinking, that's me, what can they be doing, Saffron, to get out of that cycle that they're in, you know, food-wise? What should they be eating? So
the most important, I've mentioned this a couple of times because I think it bears repeating. You know, obviously you want to get your 7 a day, you want to get all of the micro and macronutrients, but the ones that are particularly depleted when you're going through stress, that are particularly used by the adrenal glands to produce those hormones, and as I've already mentioned, are depleted by SSRIs, and magnesium. Magnesium is so vital. It's one that, as a nation, along with vitamin D, we pretty much, most of us, are short on anyway. So that's exacerbated by stress. Magnesium you can find in dark chocolate, luckily, which is nice. Also dark green leafy vegetables, seeds and nuts. So if you're going to be doing one of those smoothies, put in a handful of spinach, put in some ground nuts. Magnesium is just really important. And actually magnesium's quite a safe one. I don't think I've ever found it contraindicated with any medications my clients have been on, so it's quite a safe one. And if you take it at night, then it helps sleep as well. It helps regulate brain waves and it helps muscles relax. So if you are having trouble sleeping, again, I'd rather you spoke to a nutritional therapist, but a magnesium supplement at night time can help. Specifically, it comes in a few carriers, so try and avoid anything that says magnesium oxide. That's just the cheapest one, doesn't do any benefit. Magnesium citrate or magnesium bisglycinate, those are good ones to have. The other nutrients that are particularly important are the B family of vitamins. So they're used to help people when their anxiety, the anxiety levels are risen. So to reduce anxiety, B vitamins are good for that, and also for just controlling mood. So Marmite's a good one. I like Marmite.
Yeah, I'm from Burton, so I've always got Marmite in my fridge or in my cupboard. In fact, I had it this morning.
Oh, there you go. But I think it's only B6. Is it only B6 that's not in Marmite? I believe they're even fortifying it with B12 now. So Marmite's a good place to start. But again, mixed seeds and nuts. And also, one easy thing that people can do is to just switch over to whole grain things. So if you're making yourself toast, even just toast, have whole wheat toast. If you can't think of anything to eat and you can't be bothered to eat anything and your finances are not great, because let's face it, divorce is not cheap, then just stick some whole wheat bread in the freezer, just have a couple of slices of those for toast. And because it's whole wheat, you're getting that magnesium. When people are going for refined bread or white rice or white pasta, when they take out the husk, they're taking out the magnesium and the zinc and the B vitamins as well as the fiber. So an easy thing for people to do is just switch to whole grain products, and then they're getting those B vitamins and that magnesium as well. Oh, and the other thing is vitamin C. Vitamin C is really, really depleted when you're going through stress. And that's another easy one that is quite often not contraindicated with any medications, and it's very difficult to overdose on it. And even if you do overdose on it, you know it because you get yourself a dodgy tummy. So you can either supplement at 500 milligrams to a gram a day, or just get your 7 a day, which again I know is easier said than done when you've got other things going around your head. But if you can't get your 7 a day, then a vitamin C supplement I think should be the next thing in your medicine box.
I can't believe how much I've already learned in 20 minutes. I'm actually already sitting here thinking about all these other past and existing clients, where I'm thinking, God, I just knew about magnesium. Like,
Yeah.
I'm being serious about it. Which actually leads me on to another question, actually, which is kind of as a side point that we're talking about, the main kind of topic for us around the water separation, but actually this has affected everybody. So COVID, lockdown, how has that impacted? Because it would have thought, impacted people's eating habits.
Well, there's a lot of stuff in there in the paper about how drinking habits have gone through the roof through lockdown. Everybody's drinking more because they don't need to get up for the morning commute anymore, and how people are putting on weight because it's so easy just to open the fridge, isn't it? Or to just walk past the biscuit barrel or fruit bowl or whatever. So people are eating more, but also I think they're just moving less during lockdown. I mean, I've had quite a few people that have actually gone the other way because there's nothing else to think about, especially through the first lockdown. I think people were all geared up to, oh, this is our opportunity to make a difference in life. And they actually sort of like lost weight and they went for bike rides, and everybody all of a sudden is jogging now, isn't it? Everybody is jogging and everybody is out on their bike. I think second lockdown, that enthusiasm has diminished. And I think people have put on weight just purely through picking. I mean, I read a stat once that said people on average will eat 300 calories a day, more than they need to, purely by mindless grazing.
Yeah.
Which is a lot, you know.
When you're only that cold wintry time of year as well, when the fridge is stocked with everything. I suppose that probably would have had an impact, that kind of time of year and what people have in their fridges and cupboards as well.
Yeah, and there's also as well, I think you're right, it's the time of year. So personally, I found January and normally January I'm fine with, but personally I found January hard this year. And I think people are comfort eating more as well. You know, it's a miserable cold time of year. The weather, when we had the first lockdown, it was April and the weather was glorious and we were all out there. Second lockdown, over winter, short days, wet days, cold days, people are not going out and moving as much. And you're right, I think they just want to sort of like hunker down and just eat more. But it is also the fact that I think people are comfort eating more as well, especially this time around. I think they are. And comfort eating in and of itself, you were saying earlier that you had 3 meals, so you thought you're doing fine, but they're all drive-throughs. So people can eat a lot, but they can still be malnourished. Just because you're getting calories doesn't mean you're getting the micronutrients in there. And I think if people are comfort eating and they're turning to cakes and biscuits and ice cream, they're not getting the nutrients. And that, again, lowers mood, as I've already explained.
Funny because what you said, like you gave a prime example of most people that I know that the first lockdown, people were like, let's exercise, we've got some time. I actually didn't. It was actually the second lockdown where I thought, right, I've got a second chance. This time I'm actually going to do some working out. And I did. And then I suppose January, like you, was a little bit difficult. And then but beginning of February was like, right, I'll get back to doing it, exercising and cut out my sugar. And I'm drinking flavoured teas. And hey, Faye, I actually stopped smoking as well.
Did you?
Oh, wow, that's fantastic.
Brilliant, you.
Stopped smoking.
It.
Last time I had a cigarette was on Wednesday. So it's still really early days, but I'm literally enough. So yeah. Anyway, that's kind of off the topic. But actually, to be fair, it's holding myself accountable because I've shared it now on YouTube.
There you go. Excuse.
I would like to say that smokers need more vitamin C in their diet as well. So you might want to just look at your vitamin C levels. If you've been smoking for a while, they might be a bit depleted.
Didn't know that. I've learned more today than I think I ever did in any lesson at school. Sorry to all the teachers. I've just picked up so much. I'm thinking, oh my god, I should really do something.
I'm loving it. Absolutely loving it. I've got a question for you, actually, Saffron, because me and Tom always talk about the stages of grief and what people go through, and one of those stages is depression.
Yeah.
And I'm just kind of curious to know that if someone's at that stage, whether that's through a breakup or just suffering from depression, what is the best food that they can eat to combat depression? I'm a huge fan of foods that heal. My first mother-in-law gave me this huge book that was foods that harm and foods that can heal, and I've still got it and I still love looking at it. So I'm really interested in what can you eat for depression?
Again, it's the ones I've mostly mentioned already, really. B vitamins and magnesium. Selenium is another one, especially I've already touched on, women are more at risk of autoimmune diseases as a result of stress, and selenium can really help with them. But selenium's a really easy one to cover. I mean, all you need is a couple of Brazil nuts a day and you're absolutely sorted for selenium. So that's one that I wouldn't necessarily recommend as a supplement, but going back to the smoothies, or even if you can't eat, depression affects appetite as well. People can't be bothered to eat. But an easy way around that is if they just have like a small handful of mixed seeds and nuts, then including a couple of Brazil nuts. So if you've had something like almonds and sunflower seeds and pumpkin seeds and a couple of Brazil nuts and walnuts, you've got your omega-3, you've got selenium, you've got your B vitamins, you've got your vitamin E, and you've got zinc. So a small handful, not a lot, because they are calorie dense, and if someone's the other way and eating too much, you don't want them to have too many calories, but sort of like a small handful that if you were to do that would fall out, that is enough to cover your bases for most minerals. And I think that will be a good one for depression, for selenium. The other thing that I was thinking of is omega-3 as well. So going back to the cortisol, which is quite inflammatory and it sets off a lot of inflammation response in the body, omega-3 is quite dampening that, and omega-3 is important for the melanin sheaths around the neurons in our brain. It keeps those intact, so that's really important for depression as well. So omega-3, you need to have that in. I mean, we're supposed to have something like 4 portions of oily fish a week, but I don't know anybody that does that. So again, supplement with omega-3 as long as you're not on blood thinning medications.
Okay. I mean, I must admit, I'm not a huge fish eater, and that's something that I need to look at. Going back to the nuts, I mean, it's good that you're saying, nuts are great, but actually too many. I got through half a packet of pistachios yesterday while I was out. I love them. And you do go thinking, these are great for me, so I can eat those. But actually, I think it's worth noting again, too many aren't good for you.
No, I mean, yes, pistachio is good for you, definitely, but so calorie dense. And they are quite, although it's healthy fat. It is still quite a saturated fat, so it's an easy way of having a lot of calories. Like I said, the 300 calories a day by snacking that nobody knows they're doing.
Yeah, that's what I did yesterday. Obviously 200 calories worth of pistachios.
Yeah, but if you just had a little bit of those, that'd be great.
I was going to ask, in terms of like a real, so I'm just thinking realistically, like everyday type thing. I was saying about like people working out lockdown 1, or in my case lockdown 2, because I've decided to take lockdown 1 off. Where people don't necessarily, where people use that kind of, that lose that motivation when they go to the gym because they don't see an instant change, or where it's working out or whatever. But about that consistency, and then they start to see it building up over time. When it comes to nutrition, because obviously just taking me with the 3 drive-throughs a day, and how that kind of like instantly made me feel good, because it's like, oh, it's really nice, it's high in sugar and all the rest of it, and I get my Burger King, KFC, and it makes me feel good for a really quick, short time. How, in the real world, when you're starting to look at your magnesium, your zinc, your selenium, etc., all of these things, and really start focusing on your diet, how quickly or slowly does someone start to feel and notice a change or an impact of how their nutrition is actually helping them with things like stress, anxieties, depression, etc.?
It's a slow burn, but I always tell my clients that when they've come to see me for whatever situation, it's taken time for them to get to the stage where it's become a problem.
Yeah.
And it takes time to come back from that as well. So, I mean, if you can notice a change quite quickly. So if, for example, you were drinking 2 litres of Diet Coke a day, and then you cut that out, you would get a headache quite quickly, but that would abate within a couple of days. I think with nutrition, it's a slow burn. You can see results quickly, but it depends so much on what it is that someone wants help with and how many changes they're prepared to make in one go. Because I would rather people made small changes slowly but stuck to them. So it's the whole thing, isn't it? You need to do a habit for about 4 weeks for it to become a habit. I would rather they made one change, such as focusing on getting 7 a day and making that change for a month, and then building on that the next month with something else. But obviously, if you cut out alcohol and you had your 7 a day and you made sure you were getting, 3 square meals or whatever, you would notice a change more quickly. But whether you'd be able to sustain all of those changes is something different. So I would rather people took it slowly and saw the benefit, say, at the end of 6 weeks, as opposed to expecting an overnight change.
So to make it more of a lifestyle choice rather than something they're going to do for 8 weeks and then stop.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I want to ask you, Tom, about your drive-throughs. When did you stop that? What made you think this is not good for me? I've got to start eating better. Was there a light bulb moment? Did you sit and think about it? What happened there?
I think when I checked my overdraft and saw how much I was spending. Oh God, I didn't realize you were going to be asking me questions, so I would have prepared if I'd known. You know what? I think it probably, well, I suppose with the beauty of hindsight, it probably would have been when myself and Donna moved in together, because we then started to, because I never cooked. I never used to cook. When I was married, I couldn't cook. I used to do fry-ups and barbecues. It's the only 2 things that, in my mind, if you burnt, they still tasted good. So that's why I was fine cooking those. Apart from that, I didn't cook anything else. And I had no choice. I had to learn to cook. I had to learn from scratch. I could make simple things, obviously, pasta and things and toast and sort of stuff, but I didn't know how to make a proper meal. I never knew how to make a roast dinner or a cottage pie or anything like that. And now I can. Now I do regularly, actually. We share the cooking between us, but it's, I don't know. Yeah, I suppose it was probably when we first moved in together and something had to change. But I mean, at the time, I was still working in the city, so I was leaving the house at 6:30 in the morning, not home till 9 at best on a weekday. So all my eating was effectively on the go, or was in town. So sometimes it might have been a restaurant, but more often than not, it was walking past a prep on the way to a meeting or whatever it might be, or grabbing a bacon roll on the train on the way in and stuff like that. But yeah, something had to change and had to give.
Yeah, that's interesting, actually. So I was just going to say that's interesting.
Oh, sorry. This is live, everyone. It's going back to what you were saying, Saffron, that actually, men sometimes fluctuate more because they're not used to cooking for kids and things, and they'll just grab whatever is available to get them through the day.
Well, I'd also like to add to that as well, and what you also mentioned, Tom, about your overdraft, was that that's a very expensive way of eating. And if someone is going through a divorce, they won't, they can't afford to spend money on that. But good nutrition doesn't need to be expensive or onerous. Going back to the toast, I mean, and you mentioned, Tom, just then beans on toast. I mean, there's beans on toast is a very good meal. It's all that magnesium in it I was talking about, and the B vitamins. So looking after yourself doesn't have to be expensive or onerous. And you mentioned, Faye, that you don't like fish, but if you did, I mean, tin sardines are another one that are so cheap but are so good for you.
I love fish, and I have a tin. I've got stacks of tins of tuna in the cupboard because I can just sit there. I can just open the tin, and that can be my snack. I'm well happy with that. I love that.
That's brilliant. That's perfect.
Yeah, I mean, I do love tuna. When I say I don't like fish, I'm not a big fish eater, and I have to think, right, I've not had fish in a long time. Let me open some tuna. Let me get some fresh cod. It's not something that I eat a lot of, and that's something that I need to change, because I know fish is brilliant for lots of different things. And going back to the beans on toast, that was my go-to meal when I didn't have the kids and I couldn't be bothered. Beans on toast. But I was never into the low sugar beans because they just did not taste the same.
Let's not go down the route of talking about brands because we're not marketing it. Cool. All right. No, I've learned so much. I've kind of only really got like one last question. I think to be fair, you've answered this question about 10 times all over. But I suppose for anybody that's watching, particularly our kind of audience that are more than likely going through a relationship breakup of some kind or potentially about to, what would be kind of your top kind of 3 to 5 tips for someone who's dealing with a high stress, high emotional situation, going through the kind of turmoil of a relationship breakup, whether that be a marriage or a separation?
Well, I guess the most important thing, and it's not even anything to do with food, is sleep, really. If you're not sleeping well, then your relationship with food will get skewed because your appetite hormones, for example, ghrelin and leptin, they get distorted. Ghrelin is the one that makes you hungry, and that is exaggerated the day after poor sleep. Leptin is the hormone that stops you from eating, and that gets lessened. So you're driven to eat more, and mostly of the poor quality food, the simple carbohydrates. And then once you start eating, you find it more difficult to stop. Or you go the other way like Faye and you don't eat anything at all. So sleep is the crucial thing. And I know that's easier said than done, but that goes back to getting out for a walk, because the exercise will help you sleep. Getting out in the daylight will reset your circadian rhythm, so you're more liable to produce melatonin at the right point of day. It will also, cortisol we mentioned as well, cortisol's higher in the morning, so getting outside and resetting your circadian rhythm will also help with cortisol levels. So getting outside, it's going to impact sleep. Sleep is going to improve your relationship with food. Easier said than done, I know, but there are lots of sleep hygiene tips on the internet to help you do that. From the point of view of nutrition, those micronutrients I've already spoken about, magnesium, B vitamin, selenium, and vitamin C, they're the most important ones that you want to be looking at, and foods for those. So if you do lose your appetite, then get yourself a smoothie built around those and just have it in the fridge. If you have got an appetite but no money, you can have going to the sardines and the beans and the frozen bread. All of that stuff is cheap. Porridge even, porridge is dirt cheap, but it's really healthy. You can add frozen berries to it. So you can still eat well, even on a budget. It doesn't have to be expensive. So I think get a good store cupboard, get outside at least once a day, and if you can, focus on your sleep. Those are going to be the 3 things, plus vitamins if you need them.
That's really useful advice. I know a lot of listeners who are thinking, yes, this is me. I think it all goes into that support network, isn't it? This is what I need to be doing. I need to be eating better, making sure I sleep. And just going back to the sleep, a hot milky drink before bed, is that good? My mum always used to tell me this if I couldn't sleep. I just want your take on it, Saffron. Does it work?
Well, actually, I can see that there's sense behind it, because the particular amino acid we need to produce melatonin, the sleep hormone, is tryptophan, and tryptophan's quite high in milk, so that would make sense. Also, as well, milk's quite a good package because you've got protein and calcium and magnesium and fats and also a little bit of sugar in there, so it sort of keeps you satisfied, so you won't wake up, say, with hunger pangs in the middle of the night. and the sugar in there, the lactose, is going to help, you know, just curb your appetite as well. So I think, to me, that makes sense. Yes, yeah. If you stuck a banana in there as well, it would really help.
And how does it, if any of our audience, I mean, we'll add all your contact details in the comments and everything, but for anybody that's just watching at the moment, how do people find you, Saffron? What's the best contact for you?
Right, so I've got a website, thislifenutrition.co.uk. So you can contact me through that, and my telephone number's on there as well. I'm also on Facebook and Twitter at Mama Nutrition, and I've just started on Instagram, but they will be on Instagram because I'm just getting to terms with that. So yes, but the
I'll
website.
find you after this on Instagram.
Okay.
Me, I love a bit of Instagram. I was scared of it 6 months ago, but now it's my best friend.
Okay, cool. Hopefully I'll be like that soon as well. But yeah, my website page is the best place to go.
Oh, brilliant. Well, no,
I
look,
loved it. I've got to say.
I know.
Brilliant.
No,
Thank you.
that's been absolutely fantastic. Thank you so much for joining us today. And yeah, we will of course share your contact info in the comments, and we'll get you tagged into all of the social medias, etc. So anybody watching this, if you've got, and we always say it, don't we, Fay, but if you've got any questions, comments, queries, tips, topics, anything you want to raise about today, or any adjacent topics, please do get in touch with myself or Fay. Or if you want to reach out to Saffron as well, and can't find the details, contact one of us and we'll point you in a direction. But no, thanks very much for joining us, and yeah, we'll see you all soon.
Thank you.